usually someone else is here with me, and he's not. It's weird. I don't know what to do. What's up, everybody? My name is Nick Murphy of the Brothers Murph. Mike, as you can see, is not here. Mike is actually out on paternity leave. He just had a baby. The baby's super cute, and congratulations to him. Down in the comments, say congrats, Mike, because he had a baby. Isn't that cool? First baby, very excited. New uncle right here. It's great. It's just awesome. But nonetheless, so I'm gonna do a couple of top 10s here alone without Mike. It's just normal top 10. So for this top 10, I thought about what have I been doing a lot of lately? I've been soloing a lot of games. And we kind of talked about solo games before, but I was like, you know what, let's go ahead and do a list, because I've been playing a lot of solo games lately, and it's kind of reignited my love of solo games. I've been like, oh yeah, I really enjoy doing this. I just don't generally do it because I play games with Mike. And so it's been really, really fun. And so I was like, you know what, let's kind of revisit my favorite solo games and let's make a top 10 out of it. So let's get to number 10. My number 10 is actually a new one, and this is Ark Nova. I really like Ark Nova as a game in general. It's really, really good. And so does a lot of other people. It's very high up on the list. But nonetheless, I like Ark Nova, and Ark Nova kind of falls into the solo game that a number of the games on this list are gonna fall into, and that's kind of where your game itself doesn't change too much, but you're essentially put on a difficult timer. And basically, your game when you're playing Ark Nova solo is pretty much exactly the same, but the way that the AI doesn't really do much except for like essentially speed up the game. You essentially have a certain amount of rounds that you can do, and you have to cross your scores like you do in the normal game in that amount of time. And basically, every single time you take an action, one of these cubes is gonna move off this kind of AI little board thingy. And then I believe once 6 or 7 come off, then there's gonna be a break. And that's kind of how the breaks happen, is the AI is going to trigger it. And I believe you do 6 breaks, and then that's like the entire game. And so you just have to boogie, and you have to try and get it done. And it becomes something I very much enjoy in games in general, and that's kind of like efficiency engines, where you're like, okay, can I be efficient enough? Can I get the stuff that I need, and can I play well enough to beat the game in this time frame? I really like that, and generally with solo games, I like to have a win-lose condition mostly. I'm okay with it sometimes if there's not, but I do enjoy having like, hey, you have to do this or you lose. I do like that. And Ark Nova is really fun. If you like Ark Nova, you'll probably like it solo, just because like it's more or less the same game, but I do like games that are on timers like that, and Ark Nova is really, really good. It's number 10. Number 9 is Wingspan. I actually just recently played this again, and I played it with the Oceanic expansion and the European expansion, which doesn't change the solo too much, but this is run by the Automa factory, which all Stonemeier solo games are run, and they're all really, really good. I think the Automa factory does a very good job of making solo games, and Wingspan falls in that category where it's not complicated to run the AI, and that's one thing that I don't like in solo games, is when running the solo part of it is very difficult, and you essentially feel like you're playing a whole second game to try to like manage the AI and manage what they're doing. Like, okay, so they would grab this card, but they wouldn't grab. It's like it gets very, very complicated, and I kind of just want to play my own game. And Wingspan, the Automa, is very, very simple, and essentially what they're going to be doing is you flip over a card, and that card's going to give the Automa some kind of action depending on what round it is, and the actions essentially are 4 different actions. They can grab a face-down bird, and that face-down bird will be worth a certain amount of points depending on what difficulty you're playing with, 3, 4, or 5. 4 is kind of the normal difficulty. And then at the end of the game, all those face-down cards are just worth 4 points straight up. And then there's another one where they can gain birds, and they essentially will gain a bird from the bird tray based off of their bonus card. So if it's like birds that can eat fish, it'll take the highest value bird that can eat fish from the tray. And then those are worth the points actually on the birds, which can be a lot if it's like a 9-point bird. Like I think the Baltimore Orioles are worth like 9 points in that. It's a very, very expensive bird. And then the other ones is they can collect eggs, and the other one is that they will remove food from the bird feeder. And then they will participate with you in the end of round goal scoring. And that's mostly how they get most of their points. And it just works. It's quick. You flip over their Automa, you go, oh, they're getting 3 eggs, boom, done. Okay, I can go focus on my turn now. Okay, they're gonna get rid of these cards. Okay, cool. And it simulates another player relatively well in terms of there's not too much interaction between you, but there isn't that much interaction in the normal game of Wingspan anyway. And so it just works well. It's quick, you flip it over, it works really well, as most Automa factory ones do, and I really, really like Wingspan. It's number 9. Number 8 could really be 2 games, but I'm gonna choose Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition because that's the one we tend to play more often now. But the Terraforming Mars solo is also very good. This is another game where you're kind of playing a game on a timer. In the Ares Expedition one, which is my preferred way of playing Terraforming Mars at this point, because it's just quicker, it's easier, I just like it a little bit more. And in this one, you essentially have a second deck of cards that choose the action, and you're gonna flip over one every round on top of the one you do. And so you can kind of guess what the AI is gonna do because they can't play the same card twice just like you can. And you essentially have 25 rounds to flip over all the ocean tiles to increase the oxygen and increase the temperature. So you have 25 generations rounds, whatever, to do that in. And it's interesting because you shuffle their 5 cards and then you just flip them over one by one by one. But the last time you do it, the last 5, you actually get to choose which ones the AI does. And again, they're not actually doing anything. Essentially, it's just giving you a second action you can do on your turn. And I found it very, very interesting. And again, this is one of those, you're on a timer. You have to try and get the cards you need, get the efficiency engine that you need to finish out this game. And so the Ares Expedition one works very, very well. Terraforming Mars is kind of a similar one where I think you have like 15 generations or something like that to finish that in time. And I think it's really, really fun. And especially like in engine builder games, it's like, can I get this engine going to beat this game in time? And it's Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition is really tough, but I think it's really, really fun, and that's number 8. Number 7 is a game I've actually rediscovered my love for recently, and that is because of the solo version. Because Mike has been out on paternity leave, I've actually started soloing Marvel Legendary kind of a decent amount. I was playing it on stream a couple different times, and it had been a long time. This is our most played game by far. There was a period of a year or so where we were probably playing it multiple times a week, at least 3 to 4 times a week for about a year. So we probably played it over 100 times in 1 year. By far our most played game. We absolutely love Marvel Legendary, bought all the expansions, and then kind of after that year, we kind of started playing it less and less and less, and then over the last 2-3 years, we probably only played it a couple times, like 5 times, maybe less. And so people wanted us to play it on stream, and so I was like, you know what, I'll go ahead and solo it and kind of play dual-handed, and it's essentially the same game because it's just a co-op game. And man, I tell you, it has really reignited my love for that game, and it's really kind of rocketed up this list right now where I'm just like, man, I forgot how much I love Marvel Legendary and how much enjoyment I get from playing it solo and kind of playing two-handed solo, because you can kind of specialize your 2 different hands. For this one, you're like, oh, I'm gonna get a lot of like these kind of heroes, and this one is gonna be a lot of these kind of heroes. Like, okay, this is gonna be kind of like a recruitment heavy deck. This will be kind of like my more hard hitting deck. And I found that kind of dual play very, very fun. And again, it's kind of reignited that love of Marvel Legendary in me to the point where I'm like, hey, maybe we'll pick up some new expansions. We haven't picked up a new expansion in like 5 years, but like, maybe we'll look around. There's like a billion more at this point, so we got plenty to choose from. But Marvel Legendary has jumped to my number 7, and I really, really love this game, and it's really fun to solo. So that's number 7. Number 6 is kind of a weird one because it's Orléans. Now the thing about Orléans is the base game doesn't actually have a solo mode, but in 2 of the expansions, I believe in the 5th player expansion, there's a solo scenario that comes with it. And then in the Orléans Invasion expansion, it's literally called the big expansion, there are 3 different solo scenarios. So I believe there's 4 total for Orléans. And man, it is so much fun. The solo games are really different. Like the first solo game in the Orléans Invasion expansion, which is the easiest of the 3, there's no goods in the entire game. So it's like a lot of the games on this list and a lot of solo games, particularly like multiplayer games that have a solo mode, a lot of times you're mostly playing the same game. There's just something else going on to kind of block space and something like that. These ones, you really are playing a different game, because in this one, the first one, you're just trying to get, I think, 8 citizens by a certain amount of time. And then in the solo scenario themselves, there are set events that happen every single round. So they're a whole thing that's designed. This whole thing is this solo game. and there's 3 different ones like that. They're all really, really different and really, really fun. I really like the Orléans invasion expansion in general. I think the co-op is super, super fun. There's like a 2-player mode in there. It's really one of the biggest, most awesome expansions ever, in my opinion. And the solo games in there are really, really fun as well. And again, they're all kind of different. So if you have the Orléans expansion, if you haven't tried it solo, give it a shot. If you like Orléans and you haven't got the invasion expansion, think about picking it up because it's really, really good. I think Capstone has Orléans now, and it's just really, really fun. And it's just cool to kind of see a really good game take on a bunch of different scenarios like that. It's awesome. And that's it, Orléans. Number 5 is my favorite game of all time, and that is Viticulture. One of the reasons why I like Viticulture so much is because Viticulture is really fun to solo. This is the other Stonemeier game on here. It's run by the Automa factory. I feel like a lot of worker placement games kind of lend themselves to solo games. It's never easy to design anything, but I feel like worker placement, a lot of the solo is, okay, how are you gonna block spaces to simulate another player, right? Like how do you flip over a card that shows you, and that's what you do in Viticulture. You flip over a card, and that card will have a couple different actions on it, and then basically whatever season you're in, whether that's summer or winter if you're playing the base game, or spring, summer, fall, or winter in Tuscany, and you basically look at it, and if you're in spring, you look and see if there's any of the things in spring on there. If there is, you just block it with a neutral character. And that's it. That's the whole game. There's nothing else really different. But like a lot of the things I like, you're on a timer. You have to finish the game by the end of 7 years, and you have to get 25 points in Tuscany, 20 points in normal Viticulture. And that's it, but I do like this. It's very, very simple. You just flip over a card. What are they blocking? This and this, great. Now I can go on to my turn. I really, really enjoy that. I think it's just such, it's one of those AIs that's so simple, like so simple and so easy, but really, really effective in terms of like being like, okay, I need to harvest my fields. Please don't go to harvest my fields. Please don't harvest my fields. God, they went to harvest my fields. And it feels like the normal game where you're like, Mike, please don't go there. Please don't go there. Please don't go there. And then he goes and you're just like, that's what I needed to do. What do I do now? And that kind of, what I like in worker placement games is the need to prioritize your actions. Like, what do I have to do first? What do I have to do second? And that figuring out the order of the stuff you have to do, I really enjoy. And the AI in Viticulture simulates that pretty well, where you have a plan, but then someone might go to a spot and block you, and you're like, okay, I can't do that anymore. How am I gonna shift? And I really like that. And I think the Automa factory does a really good job with Viticulture. It's just outstanding. Love Viticulture. It's my favorite game. Number 4 is a game called The Networks. This is a game where you are running a TV network, which is a theme that does not get used enough in my opinion. I think it's really fun. It's a game by former Ferret Games and Hova, and it is so much fun. I absolutely love The Networks. And one of the reasons why The Networks has always been on pretty high in my top like games of all time list, definitely in my top probably 25 still, is because I really, really like the solo game on top of the normal game. In the solo game, you essentially have to, by the end of 5 seasons, which is the game in general always runs 5 seasons, you have to get to, I think it's 220, which is a really high score. It's a very difficult solo game. And you are kind of doing the same thing where you are putting on a show. You're getting different shows to go into your network. You have different time slots you're putting them in. Certain shows require you to have a star that goes on that show. Certain shows require you to have ads that go on it so you can make some extra money. And you're basically just trying to get viewers. And there are these, what are they called? Network cards, I think that's what they're called. And on the bottom of the network cards actually has the solo stuff, which you don't really notice in a normal game, but that's what they are. And at the bottom, you'll flip it over, and if there's any of the stuff on the bottom that is in color rather than black and white, you will then get rid of those things. And again, it's a way to kind of simulate certain things going away, which is a big part of solo games. Like, how do you simulate the other players taking worker placement spots, taking cards, doing things like that? And this one works really well, but I do like this one because, again, it's one of those efficiency engines where you just have to try to get it done in a certain amount of time depending on what cards come out. And it's really, really fun. And I really like this solo game. This used to be my favorite solo game of all time. It's not so much anymore, but I do still really, really like the network solo. It's just great. Number 3 is actually the only solo-only game on here. There's a lot of solo games I really, really want to try that are like kind of one-player games only, and a lot of them, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to try yet, but Onirim is my number 3. I really, really like Onirim. I like Onirim physically, and I also like it on the app. It's one of my favorite games to play, like on planes if I'm traveling somewhere. I really like Onirim. Onirim is a game where you are going through essentially a dream, and you are trying to get out of this dream, and there's nightmares coming at you. And it's a game with a cathartic amount of shuffling. You are shuffling non-stop in this game. And what you're doing is you're basically trying to get doors. And you are playing cards out, and you need to put three cards with the same symbol in a row. And in that case, then you will get to find and put out a door. But there are nightmares, and when a nightmare comes out, you have to do a couple different things. You can get rid of a door you've already gotten. You can like discard your hand. You can discard blind off the top of your deck. And it's that kind of where you know these things are coming, and you're just gonna be like, okay, please don't come right now because I'm ready to go. And can I get all 8 of these doors out? There's 4 colors, 2 doors per color, and you have to get them all out before you essentially run out of the deck. And whenever you get these nightmares, whenever you get these things, they get shuffled back into your deck constantly. If you accidentally draw a door, you're like, well, I can't put this door into play. I have to put the symbols in, so I'll go back in my deck, and you're shuffling constantly. And it's just so much fun. It's really, really interesting. Oh, you know, I said something wrong. You're not trying to get the same symbol. You're trying to get 3 different symbols. My apologies. You probably scream at me in the comments. It's 3 different symbols, not the 3 same symbols. And it's really, really good. It works well. Check out the app if you haven't already. There's a bunch of different little expansions for it, which are really, really cool as well. I really love Onirim. And it's a good time. And it's one of those games you can kind of play on your own. You just kind of shuffle. And I find the constant shuffling in that game very cathartic. And it's a really good time. And Onirim is number 3. Number 2 is a big Uwe game, and this is A Feast for Odin. Now, I think all big Uwe games, or at least most of them, have a solo mode. Now, the solo mode for almost every single Uwe game, at least all the ones I've seen, are basically like, hey, you're playing the exact same game, try to get 100 points. That's basically it. Or if you're playing a game like Fields of Arle, which is one of my favorite big Uwe games, you are literally, it's exact, they just don't have an opponent. That's basically all that's different. But nonetheless, it's really good. But Feast for Odin is one that feels different, and although you are mostly playing the exact same game, the way that Uwe did the solo is super, super simple, but brilliant in my opinion. And that basically is you're gonna be playing 2 colors, like blue and yellow or something like that. And this round 1, you're blue. And so you put out your workers, your junior normal stuff, game's exactly the same. At the end of the round, instead of taking your workers back, your blue workers stay out there, and then you take your yellow workers. And you then are blocking those spots. But you're the one who blocked those spots, not some kind of AI like in Viticulture where you flip over a card and block spots kind of arbitrarily like that. No, you're the one who blocked the spots. And then you put out your yellow workers, and at the end of that round, you're gonna take your blue workers, but your yellow workers stay there. And you're just doing that all 7 rounds, bouncing back and forth between blue and yellow, or your 2 colors. And it's weird. It's like, it's so simple, that kind of thing where it's like play 2 colors, and what it is, you're just blocking yourself. And so you're kind of like, oh man, I really want to do this, but if I do this, that means I can't do it next turn. So you have to, I don't know, it's interesting because it's like you're just blocking. Like other people can block your spots well in a multiplayer game, but there's something about the fact that you are the one blocking yourself just works. It works so well, and I find it so intriguing when I'm playing to being like, okay, like I can do this now, but that means I won't be able to do it next round, and is that okay? Am I gonna be able to do that, or should I wait till next round? And I find that so intriguing for whatever reason. It's such a simple AI system. It's not even AI, it's you're doing that. And I don't know, I think it works so well, and I find Feast for Odin solo so enjoyable for that reason. The fact that it's mostly the same game, and I love that game, so it works out. But then the rest of it is just you getting in your own way, and I think that's so much fun. And Feast for Odin is a really great solo game. All Uwe games are great solo because it's mostly just Uwe games. I love Uwe games. But nonetheless, Feast for Odin particularly is so much fun. It's our number 2. I like it that much. It's just great. And our number one is my favorite solo game, and I know this because this is one of the few games that I actually prefer to play solo rather than competitive, and that is Ex Libris. Ex Libris is a really, really cool game where you are running like a fantastical like fantasy library where you might be like a Bigfoot and you have a library in like the woods and stuff like that. And essentially what you're doing is you're getting these cards. These cards will have a bunch of different books on them, and the cards, all the books on one card will be all from like A or B or C or D. But there's multiple A cards. There's like A 1 through 6 or yeah. And so like when you're putting them in your shelves can be 3 cards high, and you have to put them in alphabetical order and numerical order. So if you have A5 and A2, you need to put A2 before A5. So if you don't, you're gonna have to flip those cards over. They won't count at the end of the game. And this is a game where you just have a bunch of different stuff to pay attention to. But here's the reason why I like the solo game. One, the solo game is just really, really fun. You're working against the public library, and what they're doing is they're just gobbling up books all day. They constantly, anytime you discard cards, anytime any of the locations discard cards, they all go to the public library. So they're just gathering books, so many more than you will. But you have ways to score that they don't. And you're fighting against the public library, which I think is funny. Public libraries are great. Don't fight them. They're wonderful. But in this game, it's just silly the way that the whole thing works. It's very humorous. But this is one of those games where you have to pay attention to so many different things. You're trying to get the right kind of books. There's certain books that are like banned, and you're not trying to get those kinds of books. You have your own particular focus, and that can be like fiction books. You're trying to get a bunch of those. You're trying to get a bunch of diverse genres. You're trying to get a whole bunch of different genres. You're trying to build your shelf very stable and very square. You're trying to put it in alphabetical order. There's all these different things to focus on. And while you're doing that, the public library is just, everything's going to the public library. The reason why I like this game solo rather than competitive is because it's honestly mostly a graphic design thing. This is actually a worker placement game. There's a bunch of different locations out. In a normal game, you're getting more and more locations every round. Solo game, you're actually getting less and less locations. But the locations all have different things that they do, and the text on the locations is like size 8. It's tiny, absolutely tiny. And when you're playing a multiplayer game, it's just very difficult to play because people can't read the tiles. They're like, I don't know what does that one do? You constantly have to ask, and it just becomes very frustrating. In a solo game, it's just you, so you can focus on it more. And so this is one of those games where I'm like, honestly, I don't really have much interest in playing this game competitively, really ever again. The last probably 10 times I played this game, it's been solo, and I'm kind of okay with that. I really, really like it solo. It's really outstanding. It's my favorite solo game. I love it so much. If you have a chance to try it solo, give it a shot. I love Ex Libris. It's my number one. So that is my top 10 solo games. Oh, there's actually, I think, only one game on there that's like solo only game, and that's Onirim, and I really do want to try. There's like Underfalling Skies, which Mike has actually played, but I actually haven't had a chance to play it yet. There's Legacy of You coming up. There's like Final Girl. There's a lot of like of these kind of solo only games that I really, really want to try. I just haven't had a chance to There's a lot of these solo games that I really, really want to try. I just haven't had the chance to do it. But now I'm going to try and do it. We have Underfalling Skies. I'm going to try and play it in the next week or two here because I'm just like, cool, I finally have the opportunity to play it because Mike is out of paternity leave. But anyways, down in the comments below, let us know your favorite solo games, you know, whether they're solo only games or games that have a solo mode, or maybe there's a solo mode on BGG for a game that doesn't actually have one. I really love that about BGG is finding solo modes for games. I think it's super cool. But nonetheless, down in the comments, let us know your favorite solo games. Until next time, I'm Nick Murphy, and we'll see you later. Bye, everybody.